Welcome to Networking RX, a podcast devoted to helping business professionals like you enhance your networking skills in order to become more proficient giving and receiving quality business referrals and improving the overall quality of your life and the lives of those around you. The Networking RX podcast is a production of AmSpirit Business Connections, an organization whose mission is to empower business success through networking.
I watch a lot of YouTube videos. One of the people I enjoy watching, and then I subscribe here and there. But Jordan Peterson comes up in my feed, and it's interesting to watch Jordan Peterson because just how he conducts himself. He's really unflappable. He's just very calm, and he's got a lot of data. He's for those who don't know, he's a professor up in Canada, or at least for a while. Very outspoken on accountability and responsibility, and but from time to time he is challenged in a number of areas. But one of the things he's challenged on what people call the male patriarchy, and people will say men rule the world and blah blah blah, and he calmly will respond and say, well, what do you mean by that? And, well, there's 1,000 billionaires out there and 90% of them are men. Corporate CEOs are men. There's an earning gap. It's men. And then he just calmly, responds with, well, most people in prison are men. Most people throughout history that have died in wars are men. Most people who commit suicide are men. He just got a litany of statistics, and he just follows up by saying, where's the patriarch in that? Mm. And I think there's, of course, I'm a man, but I don't want to say being a guy is tough, because that's, there's no sympathy, but I think there's, men are under a lot of pressure, and there's not a lot of profit in or a lot of interest in trying to help men, but yet men struggle, and probably will continue to struggle. But today on the program, I have on Drew Duraney. He's the Chief Resiliency Officer with an organization called Profit Compassion. He's the founder of Men Supporting Men Collaboration Tribe. And Drew, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, Frank. Thanks for having me.
But I do want to get you on. I've had a number of people on who are providing programs for, uplifting women. And I think that it's all good. I think there's a lot of different segments that need to be sported out there, and people who might roll their eyes at what you're talking about. What you're putting together. A lot of the women's groups that I talk to, and again, I've got a wife who I cheer on. I've got a daughter who I cheer on. I think they're great. They're really about breaking the glass ceiling. And what you're doing is really trying to pick men up off the floor. I think that's the difference. So it's not like, hey, we only have 90% of the world's billionaires, we need to make that 95%. It's, hey, there are a lot of men out there who, were incarcerated, coming out of being incarcerated, who may have attempted suicide, and they're just, trying to find a way back. It's very popular to, employ certain categories of people. And men are not on that list. Certainly white men are not on that list. And so anyhow, I want to, kind of talk about your program and what you're doing and how you're helping people overcome adversity and, connecting them to the right people.
Right. Oh, thanks, Frank. No, everything you say, it's all good. When people ask me, what do I support? I support humans. It is not easy being a human, let alone man, woman. And with those difficulties, we need to work together and unite rather than divide. And what I've found over my lifetime is when a label is placed upon us, labels divide. When a label is removed, we unite. And I don't like seeing the racial divides. I don't like seeing gender divides. I don't like seeing political divides. We're all human and we all tick relatively the same way. Just men tick, we think differently. The synapses fire differently. Men and women's brains fire differently. I think the goal really needs to have each, the men and the women, be open to learning the thinking language of the other gender. If we are open to understanding how each other thinks, we're going to improve communication. When we improve communication, we're going to improve relationships. When we improve relationships, those statistics get better. Fewer people want to commit suicide. There's fewer relationships that are abusive. And really that's my overarching goal, is to just get us to be in the conversation, us meaning men and women, where we want to learn. We're curious to learn how each other thinks. And I firmly believe in collaboration, not compromise in any relationship. When one compromises, somebody loses. When we collaborate, we both win. And that's really what I'm striving for.
Yeah, and I think that's I guess to pull out of that point for you before we hit record, and certainly you and I've known each other for a while now and leading up to this, because I thought I had invited you on the podcast and I realized I'd never sent the email. So you're on now. But my point is that we've known each other, but
Right.
A lot of the people that you're talking with and building this have been women. Women are helping you build this. Your coach
Absolutely.
is a woman.
Absolutely.
You were talking about another program you're going to layer onto this is going to involve a woman. And so this is not, profit compassion is not, hey men, let's circle the wagons and dominate. That let's lift ourselves up and just be better pieces to this larger puzzle. It's really what it is.
Right. I want men to be the best version of themselves. I want women to be the best version of themselves. In the end, women have men in their life who they support. Women will have husbands. Women will have sons. Women will have brothers. They'll have fathers. So yeah, I mean, the women I've been speaking to have been wonderful because they want the men in their lives to be the best version of themselves. And if the women can understand how the men in their lives think and feel, then they can help them become better. And then in turn, it helps the woman become better. That's the way I see it. We feed off of each other, negatively or positively. So,
and I think you had shared with me before in one of our calls that you have women actually referring you other men or referring you men.
Absolutely. I think one of the best stories, I was talking to a woman who's actually in Ireland, and I was on a networking group that was in London, and she heard what I was doing, and we've already had a couple of Zoom calls. And the first call was just to thank me for doing what I'm doing. And she did tell me that she's divorced, and she did say some not so nice things about her ex-husband. She did say, though, that she knows there are good men in the world. And she said that women, more often than not, if they have one male in their life that has been negative, they'll characterize the entire gender as negative. And she thinks that's not good. So that was the first thing, was she knows there are good men in the world. It's just a matter of being around them or bringing them, really gravitating towards them. The next call really gave me goosebumps and validated why I'm doing this. And she told me that she has cancer and she's going for radiation treatment, and she doesn't talk to the ex-husband, and her son, who's 20, doesn't talk to his father. She feels he really has no male role model. And God forbid if something negative happens to her and she's not around, she said, Drew, even though you're not in Ireland, I can tell my son there's somebody out there who will support you. And I'm telling you, Frank, I just got chills now. I thanked her. I said, that makes it all worth than what I'm doing, because that's the reason I'm doing this. Exactly what she said.
Yeah. Can you talk about the program? Talk about some of the, the reason you're doing this. What are some of the things you're doing? And I know there's lots of layers to it. You don't need to give us all the nitty gritty, but
well, I mean, first and foremost, people say, how did I get into this? Like, what's my expertise? And that's a fair question. And I welcome that question. I was in healthcare for 24 years on the operations end, but I finished my career 15 years in patient advocacy, patient experience, patient relations, with my focus would be to really get the caregivers and the patients and families to be on the same page so they understand the plan of care. And so they're working together, because there was a landmark study in the mid 90s that said 90% of medical errors are due to poor communication. So of course, in my mind, if you enhance the communication, you reduce the medical errors. That is first and foremost my foundation. My personal life has pushed me to this. I've been looking for my purpose my entire life, and I got divorced in April of 2018, and then starting in October of that same year, in a 3-month span, I lost my job at the hospital. My son got very sick, suicidal ideations, and my father passed away unexpectedly. 3 things that pushed me to the edge of wanting to cave. And you can define what cave means to you.
Well, it's just being overwhelmed. I mean, I can't imagine,
I thought about not wanting to be on this earth, Frank.
Yeah.
And I had 3 children who at that age were, I think that was 2018, 14, 12, and 10. They needed dad. They all lived with me, and they needed to see how dad handled this. What would I be doing to 3 young adults if I caved?
Yeah.
That's not my legacy. And I had my mother who needed me. So all of that, Frank, has put me to a whole paradigm shift in my life, a whole transformation. And when you have a paradigm shift, you have to be willing and able to make a change. And I certainly was willing. Didn't think I was able until, I started on a journey of writing a book about my life and how I can help others. And I realized, you know what? I'm not the only guy out there who's going through stuff. I'm certainly not the only guy who didn't ask for help. And I'm certainly not the only guy who thought about asking for help, and when he looked around, there was nothing for him. And I said, you know what? That is what I want to do. I want to be that destination point for people to say, hey, you know what? I know Drew will at least listen to me without judgment. And if Drew can become 50, 60, 70 men who will also act the same, that's how we're going to help people. So that's why I'm doing this.
Okay. Well, that's the why. Let's talk about some of the what.
Well, the what is the one way I thought, I'm usually have all these different ideas. I needed one thing to funnel everything through. And I have been networking for years. And when I network, I always have to really get to the core of who a human being is. That's always my point. And I'm a big connector. I want to connect the right people together. So that was the first idea. The second thing was I always want to help. So if I could build something specifically for men because of my struggles and everything, if I can build something where I'm connecting good human beings, that's my one criteria. You've got to be a good human being. You've got to be open-minded to want to help yourself and help others. And so I decided to build this community of helping men overcome adversity. And I am curating a community. It's somewhat invitation only, in the sense that the people I've met in networking, like you, I want to bring people like you in. And then if you refer this program to somebody, that's part of the invitation only, because not just know, like, and trust, because I define trust as something needs to resonate. There's got to be respect, and you got to be inspired. And those are the type of men I want, who still may not feel comfortable enough to ask for help. And so through networking, I have a once a month mastermind, where the one we had yesterday, I took the term of purpose. And we just I gave them 3 definite dictionary definitions of purpose. I told them what my definition of purpose was what gets me out of bed in the morning. Mm-hmm. And I asked them, how do you characterize purpose? And I'm telling you, 7, 8 different answers for 7 or 8 different people, it all meant the same thing. You wanted to feel part of a community and do some good. And so that was the topic of that. And if one person can draw out of that a little self-confidence to really find what their purpose is, then that's great. So we do a once a month mastermind. I do once a month a lunch and learn for members, where it would be a topic that's important to men. I have somebody doing one on how to be courageous, which is not an easy thing. I have somebody doing one on powerful, or if it's power-filled communication, which means toxic communication or healthy communication. So, and those topics are drawn from the attendees at the mastermind. They're giving me what they need. And I, because I'm a connector, I find the expert in my community who can speak to that for them. Another thing I do once a month is I'm going to be interviewing men who've gone through so much more than even I have, and have come out stronger on the other end. And they're going to tell their story in 10 minutes. It's going to inspire, and it's going to hope, and the members will be in the audience asking questions. So I really want to have different types of vehicles to really get people to be vulnerable and trust and build relationships. So that's really what I'm building everything through this program. And if there's another need, I'll provide it, So I hope that answers.
Well, it does. I mean, I guess to characterize, this is how I characterize it, is you're creating a community, you're creating a network. Again, this is not about men breaking glass ceilings or anything like that. It's about getting people off the floor. But you're creating a community where people who don't normally need to ask for help really don't have to ask for help. They just need to show up. But because by being there, they know the help is there. And I think that's
it's like help by osmosis. You show up there just by your presence. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I have that disclaimer. I tell them I'm not there to heal and treat and diagnose. No, I'm connecting them to people who can help them with that, because I have the experts to do that. And we're not here to pitch a service or a product. That can happen organically outside the 4 virtual walls. We're here to share and learn. And ultimately, Frank, I want the feeling men are going to have they'll feel listened to, not feel judged. They'll be in a trusted environment. They'll feel inspired. And that is what I'm shooting for. So it's more of a feeling you get when you're in with this group, and then you'll get so much more once you have that feeling. So I'm really trying to get that feeling first.
Yeah, no, I think it's powerful, because that's the thing that will hold people back. And we're all guilty of it when we joke about men, right? We don't ask for directions. I'll tease my wife. I'm going to do something very unmanly. I'm going to ask for directions. But it's very true. And I think it's just, it's part of who we are. It's part of certainly the culture, certainly in the Western hemisphere, that, you're a strong, able-bodied man, and you don't show your vulnerabilities. I can't possibly be lost.
Well, what you're saying has a lot to do with the labels that society puts on people. And, the same will happen for women. You'll have, when you have an assertive woman, right? What does society say? There's a name for it, and it's wrong. When a man is vulnerable or emotional, there's another negative name for that society puts on that. Yeah. So if you're not self-confidence, self-trusting, and have self-love and self-respect, those outside labels hurt you. And so you don't do the behavior that causes that negative reaction, right?
Yeah.
The big thing is to how do we gain self-confidence, self-respect, self-love? You got to have those small wins. And the small wins don't necessarily have to come from outside. They can come from yourself. I just put a post on LinkedIn yesterday about what's in our span of control. And in our span of control is our thoughts, our attitudes, our words, our behaviors. It all stems from a Gandhi quote. And if you're not confident in yourself, you're not going to believe that you can control those thoughts. Yeah. So you let the thoughts control you. And when you do that, and it's only you in your own head, and you're not asking for help, it compounds it. And that's where the suicide stuff comes into play, or the negative relationships. And we can do this ourselves if we open up and say, okay, I am going to go talk to somebody who can help me with this because they may have a different perspective. And I
Right.
can grab a tip from them and use it. And I've seen that so many times. It's just not
Yeah.
enough guys are doing it, you know?
Well, just need a little bit of hope, and that's really what your community's doing. Best way for people to get a hold of you, profitcompassion.com. Put that in the show notes.
Yeah.
Send them.
Yeah, I would say if they want to talk to me specifically, you can reach me at drew@profitcompassion.com. I'd love to set up one of those Zoom calendar things to get to know people. But I think what's really good to learn more, go to profitcompassion.com. It's just the beginning of the website and the offerings, but it'll explain this community. And if it's right for you, you could trial it. Trial it for 30 days. I just want you to experience what we're offering.
Well, knowing what I do, and really, it's all the nuts and the bolts are neat. It's the relationships that are going to be the value that people are going to take from this thing. Because in reality, you can go out and online and you can find everything you've got. There's no secret formula there, but it's the relationships and be able to rub elbows with somebody who's been through it. And understand the ups and the downs of trying to come back. I guess I thank you for coming on. I thank you for doing this, and just having having the desire and the courage to pull this whole thing together. I know you'll be successful, and a lot of people will take advantage of it.
Well, thank you very much, Frank. I'm just whatever I can do to be a better version of myself. That's what I'm trying to do. Yeah.
Thanks for joining us on the Networking RX podcast. Please put what you've learned into action today and let us know if you have questions, comments, or ideas for future topics. You can email them to us at podcast@amspirit.com. That's AmSpirit.com. Finally, so you never miss an episode, be sure to subscribe to the Networking RX podcast through iTunes, Overcast, or however you receive your podcasts. Now get out and network with someone.
The Networking RX podcast is the copyright production of AmSpirit Business Connection. All rights reserved.